Welcome to rugged, wild Cornwall, where in an instant the sea fog can come rolling in, bringing salt-laden mists. And then the next moment, we're walking in blazing sunshine. So how do the animals and plants cope in this ever-changing environment? Let's find out. The cliff tops are alive with colour, yet these tough little plants get parched in summer and nearly blown away in winter. As for the seabirds, they come ashore each year to rear their young and cling to life in what seem like impossible nests. And gardening doesn't come much wilder than this. Perched on the granite boulders of West Cornwall, we visit the place that inspired one of Britain's top artists. And in Cornwall's most famous sheltered valley, we'll uncover the wild in the gardens at Heligan. But first, let's meet local naturalist Roy Phillips, the man who can introduce us to the wild gardens of the Cornish cliffs.
Dark, beautiful pink to white.
Roy, when you're round the corner, look, the sea mist has gone,
Yeah.
and out pop the flowers. Absolutely brilliant.
It's wonderful. This is one of the most colourful bits of the cliff for the flowers at this time of the year, because you've got such a sequence, and you can see how each species has its own preferred habitat. All the thrift is in the dry bit at the top, and you go down until it gets really wet at the bottom.
Yes.
And there you have the scurvy grass.
They say the sailors of olden days bottled the juice from the plant to prevent vitamin C deficiency, the cause of scurvy on long voyages. All coastal plants evolved to cope with salt-laden air and extremes of weather. Roy sees that even in winter, these tough plants can withstand anything that's thrown at them.
And you can imagine on a northwest scale, the wind just comes up this gully and swoops everything. And anything more than a few inches tall would be completely flattened and broken off. This stuff all dies away in the winter, protects itself from the storms, and up it comes. Look at it, look now.
And the lovely thrift grows in abundance here. Hundreds of years ago, many wildflowers were used in medicines, but no use could be found for thrift. Its only purpose, it seems, is to be beautiful. Perhaps that's why they grow the cultivated version as armeria in our gardens today. And here's a plant I love, bird's foot trefoil. Often called bacon and eggs due to the egg yolk yellow of its flower, which holds red flashes for the bacon. The sea campion also grows tight to the ground. And it's great to see sheepspit, so called because the flower looks like it's been nibbled by sheep, and known locally as blue buttons. All these plants have adapted to extreme conditions by growing low to the ground and retaining moisture in their leaves. They'll colonise any surface, including old stone walls, known in Cornwall as Cornish hedges. Now, there's an idea for the garden. Roy, these dry stone walls are superb. I suppose they marked the old boundary to fields, but now they've been taken over by the plants. Look at them, there's thrift there, stonecrop, there's blue buttons, there's plantain. It's just taken over, and I suppose people in their own gardens could create a wall as well. Put some plants in, maybe have thrift in from garden centres. It'd look great.
It would. And all the little holes in here, in the wild, you've got all these little holes harbour lizards and snakes, adders and slow. But in the garden, you get small rodents coming in, mice. You never know what you might get in the way of small rodents. And toads, they like holes. Anything which creates a habitat like this will encourage wildlife into the garden.
It's a wildlife habitat in one, it's perfect.
Yeah, that's right.
But the spectacular coastline of Cornwall also provides a home for other species. Cormorants and shags come ashore once a year to breed, and if you're lucky, you might see them perched on rocky outcrops. The adults are superb divers, and these hungry growing chicks will be fed on a diet of regurgitated fish. Not to everyone's liking. The larger cormorants prefer the penthouse suite for their nests. And the smaller and more slender shags have to make do with the ground floor to rear their young. in the most precarious of nests at the bottom of the cliff. In this wild country, it's hard to think that anyone can garden successfully, but even here, on this most westerly tip of Britain, a very special garden has been created. 600 feet above sea level, and resting on huge boulders of white granite, is a house called Eagle's Nest. Its garden was made famous by the artist Patrick Heron, who settled here in 1956 and lived with his family in this windswept place for over 40 years. It's so exposed, I wonder just what plants will grow here. I'm meeting Susanna Heron, an artist herself, whom together with her sister Catherine, an architect, both look after the house and garden.
The principle of this garden that is really interesting is you can't control it, and it can only be controlled by the weather. And you have to watch what's happening and work with that. So you have to see how a plant will grow in this place and plant it where it wants to grow and where you want it to grow, because you can't clip it into shape and say you're going to grow there if it's going to grow in the other direction.
The amazing thing about this wild garden is that inside it you can find tender and exotic plants from all over the world. If it weren't for the shelter belt planted by the previous owner, William Arnold Foster, in the 1920s, it would all be rough moorland. He used coastal plants from New Zealand, like senecio, which are salt and wind tolerant, to form a ring around the garden and protect other plants. Senecio can withstand howling gales and keep its colour and shape, whilst here, even native shrubs can get windburnt and damaged. This is an astonishing garden, Susanna. Look at this tree.
It is. Spent my childhood at the top.
Did you? But there's one massive ancient stone that we simply can't miss, the Big Rock. In Cornish myth, it's called the Giant Snuff Box and was supposed to have been hurled from one end of Cornwall to the other. Oh, Susanna, look here. All that bedrock. I suppose the garden originally was just built on this, was it?
Yes, yes, it was. You can see this rock cropping up through the garden, and you can also see where these little terraces were built up to make planting areas.
So they started from
all the way
scratch.
down
If you can
here.
build a garden here, you can
Yes.
build a garden anywhere. Wow, Susanna, these are so beautiful. You almost need sunglasses. They're so bright.
They are absolutely luminous colour. Yeah, I mean, it is really the colour of these rhododendrons and azaleas and camellias, and the way that they carpet the ground and they're against the sky, that really inspired my father. Yeah.
Patrick Heron found something very special at Eagle's Nest. A unique garden of exotic plants, often from mountain areas, whose flowers had a beauty and vibrancy that transferred itself to his work.
Yes, I suppose Patrick talked endlessly about the house and the landscape and the light here. Without light, of course, there is no colour, so the colour was fantastically important to him and his whole subject, really, of painting.
The Herons continue to plan and plant the garden in the spirit of its originator, William Arnold Foster. They experiment with plants and then wait to see just what will add its own light and shade to this romantic, hidden garden.
I do still love this garden. But I do think that whoever's involved with this garden, that you inherit and you pass on, and it continues to change. So I'm very pleased to have had a part in that, but many other people have had a part in that too. And I think I was very aware of the fact that gardens were shared. I think The most wonderful thing about this garden really is to do with its position in the landscape. It's such an exotic place that's in such a bleak place in a way. You're incredibly aware of the earth in the big sense of the universe. You really are aware of the sky and the sea and the planet in the most extraordinary way.
In part 2, we'll leave the dramatic coast of West Cornwall for the south and uncover the wild side of Heligan. We'll meet a blackbird and her family undisturbed by the visitors. We'll go moth trapping and come up with some extraordinary finds. And give you some advice on what plants you can grow to attract these brilliant nighttime flyers. So we've seen how specialist plants can cling to life in an exposed coastal location, but if your garden happens to be in a sheltered coastal valley, like here at Heligan, then the possibilities for wildlife are endless. But can you have a productive garden like this and a welcome home for nature? For the thousands of visitors who come here each year, this garden needs no introduction. The Lost Gardens of Heligan, discovered in a Cornish valley not a mile from the sea and lovingly restored to its Victorian heyday. I started early in the morning with the gardeners, a time when the swallows are up and about feeding their families. Apparently they've been here for the last 2 or 3 years, and they make the journey from southern Africa all the way to Cornwall. 2 or 3 months ago, these birds were swooping between elephants' legs, and now they're taking Cornish insects. Swallows like to nest high up in the eaves of barns and outbuildings, so the young are kept cool in summer and free from predators. Once on the wing, their only requirement is fresh water and a supply of insects, both of which they get in abundance here. When Heligan was opened to visitors in 1992, it was the restoration of the formal gardens that brought in the crowds. But nowadays, the public are drawn here because they can see wildlife too.
I had to work that out the other day, and I think it's 12.
And the man who's passionate about getting everyone to garden for nature is Managing Director Peter Stafford.
But once I was able to get...
He told me how they started to encourage wildlife at Heligan.
Here we were able to take a decision that we initially set aside a relatively small area, the area behind us, where we would quite deliberately produce the maximum number of habitats by careful planting and encouraging what was there to see what happened. And we put a hide up, we built the wooden hide that people could come in, the visitors could come in and watch. And then we put a pond in front of it, and that transformed the habitat again, until it became obvious to all of us that the visitors watching all that was happening in front of them started to become captivated by British wildlife, as opposed to seeing all the exotic that they were so used to on the television. We are extending the influence of the interpretation of wildlife into all the different areas, so we get a huge variety of wildlife, even in what might be perceived to be the more formal areas of the garden.
A lot of us feed the birds in our gardens as it's a great way to encourage wildlife. But there are other ways to work with nature too. Chemical-free gardening, that's no pesticide use on plant or animal pests, is a start. And here the work is largely by hand without heavy machines, so the wildlife comes close by. And diverse planting allows a variety of creatures to flourish. And caring for plants and animals starts with looking after the soil. In the garden areas which produce vegetables, fruit and flowers, the natural soil is enriched each year with well-rotted garden compost and manure. Hungry feeders like pumpkins also get an additional dose of manure at planting time. Healthy, fertile soil produces healthy plants, with no pesticides that damage wildlife. Simple, really. In any garden, the more types of plants you grow, the wider the variety of wildlife you'll attract, including creatures you might miss, like moths, because they come out at night. We set a harmless moth trap, and Peter and I checked to see what we'd caught the following morning. Look at that.
That's the one that mimics the twig.
This is a buff tip.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing? I think it's the most incredible camouflage.
And if you saw that lying on the ground, you'd swear that that was a piece of broken birch twig. Broken at both ends, look. And you can't even see its legs.
You can't. Just
And
astonishing.
a moth hasn't got any wings, has it?
Wonderful. And of course, this feeds on oak, birch,
A whole range
poplar,
of- yeah.
aspen.
Yeah. All on the hardwoods.
Indeed. Wonderful find.
Yeah, but isn't it lovely to be able to see and introduce people to the small things in nature? You know, we're so used to all the big, exotic, dramatic creatures.
Foxes, badgers, red deer, but look at that for a fine specimen.
And the closer you get to that, if you put a microscope on it, as you know, they become more and more fascinating, not less fascinating.
Wonderful. And this one moth blows the theory that all moths are boring in brown, pink and lilac, the elephant hawk moth.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
astonishing, Peter.
It is, and we were talking earlier about how these animals can outfly, sort of quid pro quo, really sophisticated man-made flying machines, and it actually looks like a fighter.
It's a B-52 bomber.
It's a B-52 bomber. It's got a cockpit. It's got those beautiful, beautiful wings.
And do you know what it feeds on?
Yeah, I think it's a rosebay willow herb.
Lovely little pink colours.
Lovely pink colours, and it's very, very camouflaged when it's on the flower. But again, a very common flower, if you allow it to be common by encouraging it, that will encourage the continuation of these beautiful species.
Look at that. The poplar hawk moth.
And you've got that wonderful classic wing shape. It always reminds me slightly of either of a bat or a devil flying. And when you see them flying at night, look at that extraordinary shaped wing,
Wonderful.
completely different to the elephant. And it just goes to show, if you can plant or allow to grow, i.e. not cut down, this variety of often native, but it doesn't always have to be native, plants, you will get this extraordinary variety. And unless you see them, you don't realise how much good you're doing, because it may also be a bit sad to say, but these are part of a food chain and they are doomed to be eaten as well.
Right.
But if they weren't there, the species that feed off them wouldn't be there either. So this food chain that starts with these tiny little things in the earth
Yeah.
and ends up with a fox or a badger, everything is important in the middle, and we tend to forget the bits in the middle.
All kinds of flowers are really important in a garden. They play a big part in offering plenty of nectar and pollen to insects like bees, butterflies and moths. And some, like these night-scented stocks, produce flowers which are more fragrant at dusk, in order to attract moths as they begin their night flights. Another flower that moths love is the delicately scented evening primrose. And the honeysuckle is king of twilight-scented flowers. Over 200 varieties of fruit and vegetables are grown here each year, and no one family of vegetables is grown in the same place the following year. These broad beans won't be in this bed again for another 6 years. They rotate all the crops, which helps prevent a build-up of pests and diseases. Head gardener Nicola Bradley has to keep a delicate balance between welcoming wildlife and keeping unwanted natural visitors under control. And inheriting a walled garden from her Victorian predecessors helps in more ways than one.
The walls are a huge part of the garden. They offer great protection. You know, it creates a microclimate within the garden. It also creates an area to grow more produce. So the walls aren't just here as protection. They're also somewhere to grow our wall-trained fruits. You know, they made every use of every available space.
Now, it's very important that you garden for wildlife here. Is it chemical-free gardening?
What we try and do are use physical barriers wherever possible, so netting, rabbit proofing around the outer edges, so that stops the rabbits getting in basically, so you know, just eradicate the problem, you don't have to deal with it.
So sometimes as well, as I suppose, the birds can do a service for you eating pests like insects and slugs.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you know, we do encourage birds like thrushes, blackbirds into the garden. They're great, you know, and they don't interfere with vegetables through the nets. They can't get to them like the bigger wood pigeons can, and they clear up, you know, loads of our slugs and snails for us. You're quite often you're digging along and we've got a little thrush following us up the bed eating the snails, you know, and you throw them onto the path for them and it's great. They wait for us to do it. They kind of, you know, come and expect lunch from us.
This garden reminds us that whilst we're busy about our daily lives, other species are busy about theirs too. Many birds also find homes in the nest boxes at Heligan, including the famous barn owl family. Cameras attached to the boxes allow us to peep into their private lives without disturbing them. But remember, no garden is too small to attract wildlife. You too can take inspiration from what they do here, and you'd be surprised what wildlife you can attract. Join us next time when we'll see what wildlife needs to thrive in the city. Until then, goodbye.